it's supposed to have something called a slurry system.
Sorry. Highly immature. What system?
A slurry system?
Go on. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Big Con, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and simplifying the world of strategy, exploring its impact on the businesses and individuals who've either harnessed it for success or perhaps missed the mark. I am Dale, big business nerd and self-proclaimed content aficionado.
And I'm Emily, Harvard degree candidate.
We are bringing you, our listeners, in on the con. We're sharing the valuable lessons from both the failures, the triumphs of those who've come before us. And Em, we've got a short little snack today.
Shorty.
An infrastructure project that's been plagued with lots of bad things, and you tell me. I'll stop rabbiting on.
It's pretty fun. I'm going to go through a project that's going on in Australia. It was featured on Four Corners, so we'll link the Four Corners episode in the show notes. But we'll sort of go through some of the elements and then do our classic big con analysis. What do you reckon?
Let's jump in.
So today I'm covering a little something called Snowy 2.0. So named because the project is occurring in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales, which have some snow on them.
Pause for a second. I've never seen the Snowy, but I just remember that scene from Inception where it's like set in that lovely ice-capped mountains and there's like the James Bond. That's my imagination when everyone talks about the Snowy Mountains. I imagine it's much less exciting.
Yeah, no, they're nice. They're really nice, but not Inception.
Good mountains.
Yep.
Go on.
So it is a pumped hydro project with an underground power station, and it would have a massive network of tunnels that would have water in them that was supposed to be capable of powering 3 million homes for an entire week.
Whoa.
Pretty great. It was part of a low carbon future sort of project started by Malcolm Turnbull, who was the Australian Prime Minister at the time. And it really got started after there were lots of blackouts across Canberra. And we started to look at, okay, maybe we need some other energy sources other than coal.
Australia's on a massive transition away from natural gas and fossil fuels because we've got to hit those 2030 emissions targets and get those right down. And I'm sure you may go into that. But from my understanding, this is one of the big centerpieces, the flagship component of what was meant to start a lot of our green transition.
Yes, and it was quite big because it was done by a Conservative Prime Minister, and the coalition, that side of the aisle, they've got a lot of ties to coal and gas. So it was quite a big deal. But the ultimate approval was done by the lovely ScoMo, or Scott Morrison, for those who don't know.
Oh, the bloke who brought coal into Parliament and branched around, bought a lump of coal. Good bloke.
Yeah,
Good
so
bloke.
Turnbull brings it in. ScoMo kicks out Turnbull and then comes in and just takes a lot of photos with the
vintage ScoMo.
Yeah, it's bloody brilliant. To be fair, Turnbull took his fair share, but at least he got the project off the ground. ScoMo just came in and went, yeah, good.
Yeah.
It was a project that was supposed to cost $2 billion and it's blown out to $12 billion estimated. So we really got it going. So why is Snowy 2.0 failing, Dale? Well, it comes down to a little giant machine called Florence.
That is excellent control of the English language there. The old little big.
Yeah, they call her Florence. Let's call her Flo. Flo is a $150 million tunneling machine that is supposed to be able to tunnel through hard and soft ground with the right conditions. There's always that asterisk, with the right conditions with machines. While it's digging through soft ground, it's supposed to have something called a slurry system, which helps steady the ground ahead of the tunneling.
Sorry, highly immature. What system?
A slurry system. And it steadies the ground ahead of the tunneling. But the first red flag of the whole thing is there was no slurry system operating on this project at the outset. And apparently this went even against the project's own guidelines. So it's great. And
So it's like buying a fridge without having the cooling component of the fridge, I'm imagining.
Yes. Except imagine that fridge is tunneling underground and is extremely dangerous. So the people...
Go on.
the people, I know you love your metaphors. So the people, the people in charge of turning around the project if it ran into trouble, they were the ones that said, yeah, we knew the ground was soft, but we didn't know it was that soft. So, which, raises questions of investigation, which we'll get into. But they're sort of still standing by the fact that they did everything right by protocol. They're not turning around literally or metaphorically. So due to this, obviously, there was a sinkhole, a huge, huge sinkhole. They'd hit soft ground way before they expected it to. Plus, there's no slurry system. So they had to pause for weeks with it bogged basically in the ground until they could, and then they brought in the slurry machine and tried to get that going. But they said in a press release, flow is progressing steadily through the poor ground conditions. So great, we're going to keep going.
Sinking? Is it just sinking further? Is that why it was progressing? It was just...
So I think this is when it got sort of started up again, that they're just like, yeah. But it was going so slow, like way slower than anyone was sort of expecting that it would go.
Flow ain't flowing.
No. So then as flow's going through with this really unsteady ground, they released some toxic gas, which, seems accurate.
Yes, sure.
The workers who were working on the project say that they were told it was just water vapor and just to not worry about it. just
pay no attention to the burning skin feeling you have.
And it took 10 days to shut the project down after this toxic gas started being released. So,
oh no,
it's, we're laughing, but also this is really bad.
Yeah, sorry to those poor people.
Yeah. Because, why would we want to protect our staff at this point? We're just trying to do some green energy projects. But although, to be fair...
Future. We've got to focus on the future.
Yeah. But to be fair, obviously, they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
We would bloody hope they didn't know what it was. But sort of in any sort of occupational health and safety situation, workers should always be pulled in high-risk situations like that if you don't know what's going on.
Particularly in a space where there's unknowns. You're going to want to go, cool, well, I don't know. Let's err on the side of caution.
Of course. I mean, it's literally 101 when you're working on high-risk situations like that. But the number of safety breaches on the whole project have not been released. And the reason given was that the company's reputation would be damaged if they actually release the numbers of safety breaches. So it's not a great sign and doesn't
might as well just release them by this point, because the speculation's far worse.
Yeah, that's what I reckon. So Safe Work New South Wales had something to say about it. They said that there were inadequate control measures to prevent exposure to a harmful substance, which...
Were they talking about management here?
Yeah. Well, the man in charge of it all still sort of swears that they had no idea and they did nothing wrong, and they so it's quite interesting. But so Dale, let's break down the things they got wrong. They obviously costed it wrong.
Never good.
The ground conditions were wrong. They were wrong with scheduling. They were just way too ambitious. The energy construction experts said that a scheme with 27 kilometres of tunnel itself was just never going to work economically or technically. So there were people who doubted that this was even something that they should do at all. And there were other energy sources that we could have explored that weren't this dangerous to build. So some say they didn't do enough geotechnical investigation that the project required, basically understanding what the ground was and what they were digging into. And I mean, it seems like they didn't. But the argument that Turnbull and the head of the company said that they weighed up the decision to proceed not having fully explored the geotechnical situation, but they said, but you never are going to know for sure, so we just wanted to put up the right protocols for dealing with the unknowns. But you'd kind of argue that they didn't do that. And also, finally, the company who were awarded the contract had some serious safety breaches on previous projects, and staff were seriously injured, including severe brain damage. So...
Oh, whoa.
That is something either the government knew and felt comfortable moving forward because they had other protocols, or they just didn't know, which is a due diligence issue. So we don't know. So things they're doing to move forward, because this project is still currently ongoing. They're doing a contract reset, so resetting the boundaries of the contract in terms of time and when it's going to be delivered. They're doing a ways of working reset, they said, so looking at potentially making it safer.
Sounds so odd in terms of like, let's come together and let's understand how we can work better together. Like, obviously it's needed, but it sounds in something where so much stuff has gone wrong. These kind of mechanisms seem a bit tokenistic in some spaces. I understand that they're definitely
100%.
needed, but like, is kumbaya what we'd see right now? I think the contract reset is something that I'm really invested in.
Yeah, let's stop doing the Four Corners episodes and actually invest time into reworking this. Anyway, I'm glad they did the Four Corners episode because it was very interesting. But they still, at the end of the day, maintain that it is a good investment for Australia. So, Dale, let's take a break and come back after the break and discuss what we think. All right, we're back.
We are.
The insinuation by many was that Malcolm Turnbull influenced the CEO of the hired company for the works by putting political pressure on. And it's sort of easy to see how something like this could happen. I mean, Turnbull was adamant he didn't place any pressure. But I think this is always going to happen in these kind of working spaces where you have these huge projects that have a huge spotlight on it. So, I mean, the question is, should the companies that are getting these contracts, I think the real question is, should they be putting in processes for quoting that prevents them from bowing to the whims of people who are not experts on what they need to deliver? Like, do we need to go sort of one step further in protection? Like, you can look at all of the different safety things that obviously they ignored. But all of these things, I think, potentially stem from the issue of not being able to say no to a powerful person who's putting a spotlight on you. And even if Turnbull genuinely doesn't think he plays pressure, just the sheer prime ministership places pressure. So should our big companies like that, when they're taking on things, be taking these things into account?
Wow. Really interesting. And I'm trying to look at it from the point of the fact that we do have these 2030 targets that we need to hit as Australia. Most of the business council, the business areas are looking at Albanese, who's agreed to these targets, and gone, mate, you're laughing. There's no chance. In fact, the Snowy boss called some of them bullshit. He said there's just no way in which we're able to do this. And for us what we need to do is to triple our green energy grid between now and 2030. So that's based on back of the napkin math, 6 years to build effectively another couple Snowies. Yeah. Problematic. Yeah. And businesses often get a hard rap for ripping off the public because they're overquoting. They're saying, oh, it's going to cost this, it's going to cost this. And we look at Victorian infrastructure projects, they're often quite laughable because there's lots of union costs and the cost blowout extortionately, as has this. Yeah. And they're accused of overquoting versus what may be actually happening, which is quoting your actual price, acknowledging that it's going to go up. So I think it's kind of, as we start to understand government's role in this, is around when they need to step in to provide the extra, whatever it might be, infrastructure advice, loosening up the land to be able to supply this. There's no doubt. I think we can call it. I'm not a geological expert, but from my understanding, building 27 kilometers worth of tunnels and everything else that needs to occur to make this project viable is going to be difficult. And I think a lot of the things we're going to see in green investment is going to be difficult because we're going to be going into untapped land sources and building giant cables back to the mainland, back to main infrastructure, which is another problem with Snow 2.0 in terms of it's so far away from where it needs to be. There's a certain amount of leadership that a government needs to show in this and kind of set the North Star and like, this is where we're going to go. We're going to hit these targets. We're going to put in these awesome investment projects. And it's unfair to put businesses in a perspective of being like, come on, mate, you can't be doing that. So I think there does need to be a balance between, let's make something good for a press conference, which from what this feels like a press conference and a PowerPoint slide deck that went wrong quite fast. Yeah. Like anyone who's watched Utopia, it sounds like someone's gone, listen, we're really getting hammered over this coal thing. We need to show we're doing a project. And someone's sitting in a whiteboard office, Snowy 2.0 ? And being like, ooh, that looks good. What's Snowy 2.0? And like, oh, it's just something we're thinking about. What if we expanded the Snowy and it powered through in houses? And Turnbull's gone, what if? Let's make it happen.
Well, I think it was really interesting because someone said, I can't remember who said it in the doco, but someone said Turnbull was just extraordinarily uninformed.
Yeah.
He even says, "Oh, I did my research," and that's the red flag already. Like, I've done my research. Like, even if you are the Prime Minister, you should be listening to experts and allowing people to help you, because they've also got the pressures of voters and wanting to show, you know, yes, we're doing this green energy thing. It's going to be great. We're providing jobs to people. We're doing this and that. And
plus
then
it's investment. Like, if the money doesn't go to them, it's going to go somewhere else. And sometimes these companies rely on this investment to stay afloat, to operate their business, to grow and to become businesses. So there is this a tension that they're forced in to be able to provide there in terms of they're providing critical infrastructure. And so there's a certain amount of goodwill and investment that the government needs to spend in that space, and will spend that space to return to the public. But it's the tension we have around the private-public space. Tension is good in this space. I think there does need to be a tension between private and public in some capacity. But this seems like one where it's stretched it too far and it made people do things that they definitely shouldn't have. I think the one thing I really like from this is in terms of doing things they shouldn't have, the line throughout seems to be that they were doing things by the book.
Yeah.
And that calls into question that maybe the book isn't great.
Yeah, maybe we need to rewrite the book. But I think especially when you're doing, it's really, really hard when you're doing these projects. They're going to have a really big social impact. So your goals are fantastic, and there is definitely a sense of urgency around climate change. There is no doubt we need to do something about it. So this sense of urgency is really important, but we need to also weigh that up in terms of the immediate safety of people, because you can't have people going in blindly like this just because you have a set of criteria to meet. And, you know, we're in this instance because we haven't made good decisions in the past in the first place. So you can't punish people for not making the decision in time. And I think that really applies to big companies. I don't think there's anyone listening who hasn't worked for a company, who's seen the writing on the wall about something, been saying, hey, we should do something about this, we should do something about this, we should do something about this. BAU, whatever it is, has gotten in the way and we're not doing something about it. And then all of a sudden something is critical and urgent and everyone has to drop everything to deliver on something that could have been started ages ago. And then you start to see burnout. You start to see bad safety decisions being made. You start to see bad culture. You start to see all of these kinds of things. This is not a political black hole. It's everywhere. We're doing this all the time. And I feel like there needs to be something that we reflect upon as an industry, as a society, is, you know, how we function in these spaces. And then being aware that, okay, I've now got a time critical piece. What are my risks if I push forward with this? Just taking a minute to sort of think about those things.
Just a giant red button that someone can press that just says, I think we have an issue here, guys. Can we take a moment? We don't need to do the PowerPoint deck and send the weekly report. Maybe we need to deal with the issues.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get off the hamster wheel, particularly when we're all sitting there going, no, the hamster wheel needs to succeed.
Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult.
This seems like a fable that we've applied. Well, listeners, there you have it. You now understand a little bit more of the con. We hope that you have avoided releasing toxic gas into the atmosphere in the future. Again, sorry for those people who may have been injured by that space.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Big Con podcast. It not only spots us, but means you'll get the latest episodes straight to your device. Do not keep the fun to yourself. Either share the con around to your mother, your aunt, your best friends, brother. Tell them to check us out on all your favorite podcast apps and also on the video platforms, YouTube and TikTok. For any further details, head over to our website, thebigconsultingagency.com, and sign up to the mailing list. Bye for now.
Thanks, Steve.
This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Warrior